Welcome to Secure Management Faculties, where your mind is key before you unlock what is seen. Secure Agent Dreyfuse. All right, this is just to reconfirm the virtual reality playlist. I still will be inherently given a transparency, self-defense related topic, and then we're going to ship into the second and third layer of the virtual reality concept. So we're going to start here. You're going to get a quick presentation of the real training I have in real life in context with the weapon that's going to be under question. And we're going to be doing a Glock series pistol, specifically Generation 4 Glock 17 that I was using. And as we transfer into the simulated portions of it, I want you to be mindful that more or less in context, depending on what resources are available within that simulation, we will be finding the Glock models and transferring that into the application of its former use in the simulation and the actual virtual range. With that said, this is the first level before we transition to the second, and then the last one will be the actual simulation, and the determinations will be made as we somewhat go along, and you'll see as we switch between each of these chambers, if you will. All right, so starting off with the first chamber, below you should be able to see a reminder video of me actually using that Glock 17 Generation 4 at a past local department I used to be involved with. And you're going to also see, after the action clip of me using it, and it should be reloading and things of this nature, you can get the full run of that drill instruction or their qualification in the video log playlist or video blog playlist. Then shortly right after, you should see the actual Glock 17 I used in first person view of me showing you and displaying the weapon. It should be in a monitor frame, so you'll see that below or to the side or whatever it is that fits the situation once it gets all molded together. Now that that's done, let's jump into the topic. We're going to be talking about levels within levels in two ways. Positive, as far as your training apparatus goes, and relationship with weapons or tools. And then we're going to be talking about levels within levels, and the concept of self-defense being in a threat level perception. All right. So first and foremost, let's talk about those positives, right? So relationship with a person, training, or items. The key advice here is stay grounded. Let me repeat myself. Stay grounded. Be fundamental in your abstract core principles of doing things original. And when I say doing things original, that's going to have to come to your context into what that relationship is. For this example, we're going to be using something to generate a host for it, and that'll be the iron sights. We'll be using specifically the base iron sights on a weapon, the red dot because it's electronic, and then we're going to be putting in third place the scope ocular. Think of like on sniper rifles, if you will. Those come electronic as well, but we're going to be using that because that takes a little bit more finesse, if you will, with the whole windage and zoning. And not saying you don't have to do that with the electronic red dot sight, but they're two different breeds. So here's the thing. By standard, fundamental wise, you want to operate with using iron sights. I know it's a controversial topic about iron sights versus red dot and things of this nature, but the whole point of it is to understand of what is most fundamentally going to be used when all the courtesy of the bourgeoisie resources are gone. Example, if everything goes to hell tomorrow, you're going to have your fists, your feet, your mouth, and your senses. What is the base, most grounded thing of importance? In relationship context, what is the most fundamental thing that is important when all the showmanships of social media and the extravagant wants and ideals and lusts are derived to those items and tools? Once those are fallen, What is the thing that even kept them up in foundation? And this is the example we're going to be using with iron sights. I have no problem with red dot sights or the scope sights. But what I'm getting at is fundamentally stay connected to using the basic sights and putting this in a real life context. Stay connected to the fundamental abstracts of why you're in relationship with that item, person, or thing. Because when stuff goes to hell, you want to be able to fundamentally be the very source in which all these other modified courtesies came from. And in this example with a pistol, doesn't matter if it's a rifle, get acquainted with those firearms and don't oversell yourself to a courtesy of a higher standard of a level within all these levels, because we're all talking about sights. We're not talking about any other portion of the weapon. Don't sell yourself to the higher levels just to forget the fundamental level. That's really simple. Now, let's go over to the actual negative aspect, which I consider to be, as far as self-defense, identifying principal perception of a level of use of force, not the switching between levels of use of force. And what I mean by that is switching from hands, melee, deadly force, ranged weapons, and things of this nature. We'll be talking about a hands-on portion, the hands-to-hand combat portion that is separated in these three chambers exactly: open palm, closed fist, and enhanced situational closed fist. I identify these things to be as a state of restraint, a state of unleashed, and a state of unbound. That's when we start to get real emphasized. You can even imagine accelerated weapons in context to using a fist, such as like brass knuckles. But we'll keep that relevant to the fact of what the last part of unbound means. So, obviously, slap boxing, right? Slap boxing is relatively low impact. You can still have an aggression, an argument, and an exchange with a person, and a person can open palm you. Is it going to kill you? No. Is the aggression there? Yes. Are the threats there? Yes. But it is operating under the default expectation of what a hands-on encounter should be like, especially with the habit of what humans do when they get into hand-on encounters, and they often densify their fists, ball it up, and then they strike you with it. Now, with that expectation comes the default of that level of use of force. And this is when you get particular in the tip of the spear of how use of force is being used in the context to the final distribution of it when it's being placed in application in its form of use. So, just to be quick about it, to wrap it up, if I'm open palming, that's me being nice. If I'm closed-fisted, you can expect that to be a balance of expected use of force to that degree of what that use of force is. This is hand-to-hand confrontation with the intent to use the level of force of hand-to-hand. And to emphasize and take the brass knuckles out, because I said we were not going to be using force multipliers. Imagine a person being 2, 3, or 4 times bigger than you with a bigger fist, bone structure, wrist, knuckles, and all this, in context to your frame being smaller and them having the stronger blow per strike. That's when it becomes unbound. You can even be unbound in the context of not having a weapon, depending on the degree of separation of physical abilities and things of this nature. This is not about perseverance or a person smaller, bigger, overcoming obstacles. This is just simply the metaphysics, if you will, or correction, the physicalities of the situation of what it means to engage in the position of the relationship of that use of force, from restrained, open palm, unleashed, fist or ball intensified, and unbound. How severely overclassing are these physical structures that the person with their body is imposing on you? How much more or less is that relationship in distance and creating a threat for you to make it so much more times per strike, if you will. So, for this threat section, for unidentifying the levels, simple. You're in an altercation. You get in an argument. People are spouting out. Evil eyes everywhere. Mean mugs everywhere. Argument, confrontation. You get hit with a palm strike, you can take that as a warning. I'm not saying that the situation won't be contextual to you have to respond and defend yourself, but that detail matters. Just be aware of the less non-threatening application of what it means to be open-handedly strike in the context of a person restraining intentionally versus closed fist, I'm going to hurt you, I'm going to hit you with full trauma, and versus outclassing closed fist, whether it be the VI size or let's use a relevant force multiplier application such as brass knuckles that can act as an enhancer per strike. Understand those layers: restrain, unleash, and unbound. That is simple. All right, the lesson is done. We'll be moving over to the virtual reality segment. I'll be explaining some things, and I'll be using a Glock series weapon in that virtual range. They may or may not have the Glock 17 Generation 4, but you will see a exact replica of the Glock Generation pistol. I'll be using it and roughly talking about how I'm going to be in relationship with that platform. Then we're going to actually transfer to the simulation portion, and then that's where the short-term fun will begin. It'll be a nice little nip and entertainment with that, and we'll close out the video. Again, appreciate it, and remember the threat levels of the situation in the context with the perception of identifying how the tip of the spear, if you will, of those threat levels are being used, and the positive side of not threat levels, but your relationship with your fundamentals, with your weapon, situation, circumstances in your life, and the high courtesies. And don't get too much caught up into them, because you can get lost and start to create a foundation of fundamentals that is away from the actual abstract fundamentals. All right, let's get over to that virtual reality. Once again, much appreciated. Let's get started. All right, welcome to the virtual reality portion of the range. All right, so now this is the range environment that we're going to be using, and I'll be using my wrist data tool to get the firearm shortly. Any application of, because I have some range applications and some actual range shot courses that I'm going to be implementing that I scraped offline just for fun, but not today. And we'll just be engaging the weapon that we were just talking about. And I believe for here they have the Glock 19. It might be the Glock 19 or 18. I can't remember. But we'll just be checking that wrist data in a minute. And so let's shoot about, what, 10 meters out? Let's get out of shot. Yeah, that should be good enough. That looks visually presentable so you can see the rounds and stuff like that. So basically, I'm just going to be talking about things in conjunction with me using this firearm in actual real life, in the context bringing it over to the virtual world, and then sort of giving my feel about it. Since I've already got an experience with the Glock, my Generation 4 17, I know about the recoil. I have experience with it, shooting hundreds of rounds down range with it, so I'm pretty much will be able to adhere to some dysfunctions, if you will, or be aware of those dysfunctions when we're shooting with it in the virtual context, and then I'll be able to point some of those out. But we're not going to stay in this chamber too long. We're going to hurry up and get to the actual virtual range. I've decided it's not going to be this one. We're going to be using the RV4 correction. Yes, Resident Evil 4's range, just because I want to be entertained with that gameplay style. Now, it's going to be using this little data menu to find the weapon. So as you can see, all the display of the weapons are accurate. I'm having a tough time actually seeing it right now. Just got a little bit of fog. Just give me a sec. So I'm gonna see if we can find that Glock first before anything. As you see, you got the Desert Eagle. You got multiple weapons that you can find. Okay, so they do actually have the Glock 17. So we're going to actually get that out, and we're going to simulate that on the run. So let's spawn that out. There we go. Good, they actually got it. So that's what's up. They actually have the weapon. All right, so I'm gonna have to go through the controls real quick because they're slightly different than Resident Evil's controls. So I should have a spare mag somewhere on my pouch. I'm just gonna have to remember where it's at. There it is. I should be able to have to charge the weapon. All set. Okay. So fingers extended. We're all set and ready to go. And let's just give it some easy rounds down range just to see if it has the exact feel. Obviously, we're going to negate the weight. The weight itself is not there. And just simply understanding that virtual context. If I can find a way to simulate the weight for future context, I definitely will. So let's see if we can get the hand on there actually, right? Okay, that works. There we go. Let's throw some rounds down. Definitely need to improve in the actual shot sound. I may be increasing the distance. That looks a little bit way too easy. Yeah, way too easy. Let's drop a mag out real quick. Put a fresh one in there. Let's increase that. Hopefully you can see the targets, and we're going to actually reset that target. Thank you for the virtual world, right? Because now you don't got to take the paper targets down. Let's see if we can actually get that to reset. Looks like I'm having problems with the reset button. Let's bring her back real quick. Alright, so she did clear out. Matter of fact, since we're on it, let's just do a blitz drill from the holster. Doing it from the hip, that'll be fun. Okay, round's not looking too bad. Let's see how it looks empty. Okay, slide locks to the rear, drop it. Drop the magazine, insert, reload. Good. Alright, so let's see how that reset button works. Just hold the firearm there. Good, it works. So let's throw that back off to 15 real quick. We're not about to stay in here too long, but you're generally going to get the understanding about where we're going to be going with this. I'm going to be testing multiple weapons out. Like, as I said, you already seen that I had the Glock finger is in safety. Good. Most games don't have that. And let's actually see if we can confirm. There's no generation tab here, but it is 9mm, but it looks great. I'm kind of, you know, feeling excited about that, you know, because I just had the real gun in context in my hand. Now I'm shooting here. All right, so I'm gonna just throw some more rounds down range until I empty the mag more or less. Then we're gonna leave from here. You see the context, and I'm gonna actually start discussing the specs as well from this place, so we can actually have that as an authentic defining feature as well. So let's get to it. Definitely no, oh, that seemed like that was automatic. Definitely no, it has the registered pattern for it, right? The recoil. I'm gonna set her down real quick. It has the registered pattern for the recoil. I can see that, but I'm definitely not feeling no reverberation. Oh, that's another thing too as well. So I noticed I was swaying with the barrel of the gun, and when I was pulling back on the trigger, it's empty. Let's get that out of there, right? Everything's safe and clear. See that? All right, nothing in there. So I noticed when I was pulling with my finger, it was simulating the actual pull that you feel when you don't have good trigger control. So when I was slapping that trigger back and forth, as you can see, my grouping spread out around that target. Now, of course, I was selectively shooting around, but when I started to condense more towards the center of my target, you'll be able to see around that whole entire area where I was just slapping the trigger, that actually was showing in the actual application with me using this remote and hand combination. So that is a real feature. The only thing that was not replicated was that the actual rate of the firearm and the feel of the recoil when you're pulling it. The recoil was more simulated, so I had to wait until the visual effect of the recoil was over, and then I had to proceed. But the actual effect of bad trigger control, if you will, in that moment, actually showed the application and its effects through the actual use in this virtual segment. But I'm going to actually clear that out. I want to shoot some more rounds, but I want to get a little bit more serious about that because I want to see those effects and see if I can improve that trigger control in virtual game. So let's charge that weapon. Let's get set back up. And I'm about to actually use starting now. Definitely simulated up there. The sights have to be aligned as well too. I'm actually under no pressure, so I might definitely have to get those shooting courses that I've accumulated online. I seen that shot flew. I wonder if that's simulated. All right, we're looking good. Check that, looking clear. I'm gonna just drop that in and then bring this back. All right, so not too bad. So I had one flyer over to the side. I seen my gun actually shifting. I wonder if that was more of a simulation thing, because as far as my hand go, my hand was very much steady, but I did see the actual avatar hand in engagement. That's not good. That actually picked up that way. So let's see if we can get that up. Right. That did. The actual avatar hands were moving in a swaying motion, but I like all those elements a part of it. You see the improvement. My group actually tightened up. I did have the flyer over to this side, but once I started to condense and concentrate my shots with the adherence to the pre-programmed recoil and buffed up my trigger control, my shots were great. And we'll start implementing the meters to the actual yards and to what that equates to doing the shot performance and things of this nature. So this is the range we'll be coming back to if I can, by defining the specs. I'm going to define the specs first on weapons and then come here and test them if I have them part of my archives and or use them on the range, such as what you've seen with my Glock 17 Generation 4. All right, now we'll be cutting this and we'll be moving to the Resident Evil 4 range, have that last play with the Glock simulated weapon there, and then we'll end it here. All right, we'll be cutting out and leaving now. All right, so we're going to be running the Blacktail pistol, and the Blacktail pistol is the best simulated weapon available that is similar to the Glock. It is in the Resident Evil 4 franchise gameplay, and based off of the build and its handling proportions when using it in shooting in the actual Resident Evil world, the context fits the Glock in its relationship and its performance duties. So we've used the actual real Glock. We found the Glock 17 in the actual simulated range that we used before, and now we're in the actual work range or the game range that we're going to use to simulate this in full active action. Let's get started. Oh, she's in the way. This right there. Oh, was a digital lag, digital lag. Okay, so that was a nice little run. It was not bad. I would preferably want to do better. Pretty much increase headshots. Let's get at another run and see if I can actually run that in the context of doing headshots real good. Run that blacktail simulated version of the block. Let's get started. Good. Missed that one. Definitely acknowledge that. Missed that one too. Okay, that was overall okay. But as you can see, this will be the expectation of how we're going to be running our relationship with the range and the weapons I'm going to be using. It's not always going to end up on this game platform, but as you can see, it was definitely an intense, I actually enjoyed myself shooting at fast-paced, responsive range context. And if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, depending on what the crowd applause was at the end, that gives you an idea how good you did. Even though I was hitting my targets and shooting my targets down, the game, I believe if I remember correctly, wants me to get precise headshots, which is fine, but performance for me at that point in that time and me engaging those targets, the fun, zombie, infected, mutated based targets, if you will, was a good thing to run. Again, appreciate everybody who viewed this observation. This was basically a trial run, not an introduction, but a trial run. You're going to see how we enter through the chambers from real life, virtual context, informative, and then start to make things fun when we get here. Again, appreciate all who attended, observed this content. Again, if you need to sell your firearm, go to the tab below, hit that tab, send a firearm out. I don't need to finish it. Get your extra currency. And again, welcome to the virtual reality playlist. I enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to making more contact. See you until the next upload.